So good morning, it's Father's Day. So here's to all the fathers.
Hey Dad, you and I, we talk a lot, right? Shoot the breeze as they used to call it. And it's one of my favorite things about you. Whatever I want to talk about, you can talk about it too. It's always been like that. If I wanted to do it, you do it too. And you had this endless patience for me in all my learning phases. You know, the shoe tying, bike riding, the math learning, the ball throwing, the car driving, just to name a few. Truth is, I'm still learning from you even today, even if I won't admit it. But I didn't realize then how long your patience really was. How much I tested it with my attitude and that mouth of mine. How many prayers you must have prayed on those long drives you took alone. But you kept at it. Those talks you insisted on having with me, those rules you wouldn't budge on, those hard consequences that you made me face, the way you wouldn't let me give up on myself. So yeah, we still talk a lot, but I realized the other day, I haven't said enough to you about the things that really matter. I guess somehow I thought you surely must know how grateful I am for all that you've endured for my sake. How secure I felt because you always kept your eye on me. How thankful I am that you held fast to all the right things on my behalf. So I don't want this Father's Day to go by without you knowing I love you, Dad. I'm thankful for you. God, as he always does, knew what he was doing when he was handing out fathers. He blessed me. You made us a great team. Love you, Dad.
So happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Christ be with you. And may we offer that peace to one another by just giving a friendly wave. Could I get Grace and Eleanor to come up here this morning? So it's an important day today, right? Father's Day. So the deacons have, they want to remember the fathers on Father's Day. So I want you to help me out. If you would, pass out some pins and pens. And there's even some, what is that? Reese's peanut butter. So let them choose what they would like. Just go. What's that? Oh, they can have one of each. Wow, great. So find all the men.
That's a good thing. That's so sweet.
Everybody gets.
Yep.
Thank you.
They're so sweet.
So it's Happy Father's Day from the deacons. Yay.
Thanks, Susan.
I have to tell you, when we were in Maine, the very first night, the very first meal we had, my daughter-in-law had prepared lobster rolls and haddock with French fries.
Oh, no.
Got my Maine fix. And then we had scallops the next night with some salmon. And, wow.
Did Bella like it?
Bella didn't get to try
Oh,
it.
darn. Bella.
With you next time. You got room in your camper. I'll be with you next time.
All right. Thank you so much, girls.
Today is a scripture lesson, Genesis 18, 1 through 15. The three visitors. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw three men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat, so you can be refreshed and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered, "do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of fine flour and knead it and bake some bread." Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice, tender calf and gave it to the servant, who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared, and he set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. "Where is your wife, Sarah?" they asked him. "There, in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already old and well advanced in years, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, well, will I now have this pleasure?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I did not lie." But he said, "Yes, you did laugh." Here ends the reading of the Holy Spirit. May the Holy Spirit lead us where it will.
So I'm going to take you back a few years, like 19 years. Do you remember John and Kate plus 8, this TV show on TLC? It's a story about this couple who fell in love, they got married, and then after they were married, they decided they wanted to have a family. And so they tried, and they ended up with twin girls. John's thinking, well, good, we're set. We have our family. But then Kate one day says, I'd like to have a third child. Well, he wasn't quite on board with that idea, but gave in to the idea and said, okay. Now they had to do in vitro fertilization for the first 2. And so they had to do that process all over again. And imagine when they went to their first obstetrics appointment. And they see on this ultrasound, there were 7 embryos. The doctor explained to him that they could, go through a procedure to reduce the number, but that was against their religious conviction, so they didn't want to do that. One of the embryos did not survive so that 6 grew in her, and they thrived. And they arrived into the world on May 10th, 2004. They're 19 years old last month. So imagine that couple in that little room as they went for their first ultrasound appointment. Mom is already laying down, but Dad isn't. And I can only imagine how small the room became and how stuffy it might have been and close. And I believe there was some nervous laughter there after all of that news had finally set in. And I'm sure at first the idea was having 6 more in the family was not amusing. 6 babies plus the twins, that makes 8. But in today's Bible reading from Genesis, Sarah laughed because there was no way the stranger's words could be true. But he said, I will return to you in due season, and Sarah will have a son. I can imagine Sarah leaning up against the doorway of the tent and thinking, what? Did I just hear what I thought I heard? She probably giggled inside first, and then perhaps the laughter becoming more audible as she really thought about this preposterous idea. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Do you have the address right, O angel of God? There's a young couple down the way. I'm sure you meant to knock on their door rather than mine. Abraham was smart enough not to laugh in front of his wife, especially at her age. She was an old woman by then, long past menopause, and he was an old man. So getting pregnant wasn't even a distant possibility in their mind's eye. Yet I imagine there came a day later on when the laughter went away and Sarah and her husband turned pale and got sweaty. The day that Sarah realized that the prediction was true. There is a baby on the way. What are we going to do? How could God suggest such a thing? Because Abraham and Sarah had resigned long ago to the fact that they were not going to have children together. In fact, it had been long ago, it just ceased to be something they desired, in fact. So much so that they had given up on the idea that Sarah encouraged Abraham to have a child with Hagar, the servant, so he could at least have a child. But after that, Sarah became very jealous of Hagar and the child Ishmael. Problems developed. So when the promise was fulfilled that Sarah and Abraham would birth a nation, imagine this, they were going to birth a nation but couldn't have a baby until very late. And after all those years of hoping and praying for a baby and living through the realization of no hope, because the possibility was long past, who wouldn't laugh at such an absurd announcement? After Sarah gave birth to their son Isaac, she laughed again. This time, though, the laughter was different. It wasn't the nervous laughter of who could imagine such a thing. It was the laughter of who could imagine such a thing. And came from a joyous heart of a mother holding and nursing her own baby, and after she thought her most heartfelt prayer would go unanswered. It's a story about Gracie Allen, the comedian and wife of George Burns. And it illustrates the open-endedness of one's faith, the stubborn refusal to give up on possibilities. For years, Burns and Allen were an inseparable comedy team. in the radio and on television. On stage, Gracie played a lovable but dim-witted character whose misunderstandings were the stuff of great comedy. For example, at the end of many of those shows, George would tell her, "Say goodnight, Gracie." Gracie would respond, "Good night, Gracie." Love it. But in real life, Gracie was a shrewd businesswoman, a loving wife, and a woman of a deep and abiding faith. She died young, and when she did, her husband, George, was devastated, of course. Yet before she died, Gracie left George a note. And that note continued to speak to him for the rest of his life. It contained these words: "Never place a period where God has placed a comma." Perhaps we could say that God merely placed a comma in the life of Abraham and Sarah. It's a reminder of our faith. It's a reminder that God is always speaking to us. God is always working from within us and all around us. How many times in your life have you said, "Yeah, right, God," but the possibility of something good coming out of a situation you had long given up on? Most times it happens after we have given up. It happens after we get out of the way and let God truly work in our lives, that the most impossible ideas come to be. It may be that we suddenly find ourselves enjoying life after we thought that nothing could ever make us happy again. Sometimes people are imprisoned by fear, anxiety, addictions, mental illness. And to find a way to truly live again is a miracle. Sometimes a person grieving for a long time, for what seems to be an interminable length of time, may find themselves laughing out loud one day. A feeling they didn't know was possible anymore. Or a patient who suffers a broken hip and going through therapy and encouragement one day standing in their living room. Sometimes after we have been bruised by the effects of separation or broken relationships, perhaps we can find a way to be happy again. To go on living even after that thought that happiness would never ever visit again. Sometimes we build walls around ourselves to separate ourselves from others. And any attempt to break down those barriers created by the wall that we construct and put up, that's difficult. Yet sometimes over time, the wall that once created a barrier can be opened to let others in once again. Laughter may take place in the joy that is once again realized. When it seems as though sometimes our prayers may go unanswered. When we say, "Where are you, God? Why aren't you giving me this message?" Well, God has placed a comma. There is more yet to come. No longer is the laughter of disbelief being heard, but the laughter that recognizes that an unimaginable thing has really actually happened. But what about those who live in disappointment when their heart's desire has never been realized? What about those who live in their whole lives where grief or illness is never resolved with health or happiness? Are they not blessed by God? Sarah and Abraham received the gift of faith from God in an unusual and unexpected form. For many years they hoped and prayed, and that hope was their faith. even when they didn't receive what they prayed for in a timely fashion according to our human-based timelines. Many of us will never receive our heart's desire. And we learn to live with disappointment and go on. But we learn that hope and faith exist beyond getting our heart's desires sometimes. Hope and faith are found in the goodness of God and the gift of living. Perhaps our heart's desire will morph into something new. It doesn't always mean that that will be perfect either. But remembering that God's love comes to us in many different ways. And that brings us hope. And that hope reaches out to us when we least expect it. Thanks be to God. Amen. Please rise for our hymn, Standing on the Promises. As we come to our time of prayer this morning, let us be mindful of all those persons who are listed on our prayer list this morning. Are there others that we need to add to this prayer list? And are there joys and celebrations you'd like to lift up this morning?
I asked Susan a question and she gave an answer pretty well. Good. I hear that Dawn is doing really well and her grandson's doing well.
Praise be to God.
And I hope also that your father is doing very well as well.
Yes. Andy over here.
Blessing. I think we all can be very thankful for a quarter inch of rain last night and petition for more.
Absolutely.
I have a blessing today. I volunteered as the cookies and coffee, and that was probably more than I could do and read. It's so nice that Lois Thompson just made cookies with her sister Helen and are helping me, because I probably wouldn't have gotten it all done. So thank you that everybody helps me.
Yes. Are there others? Give thanks that Carl is recovering from his surgery, but he does need a ride to Cedar Rapids on Thursday for a doctor's appointment at 10:30. So if you can offer him a ride, he would be greatly appreciated. Appreciate it. All right, I guess we have Susan.
Sorry. I just want to thank the Lord that we had safe travels back and forth to Maine. Now I just would like prayers for our son and he's bringing 4 kids with him on Saturday and driving straight through, so we just need prayers for him for safe
Absolutely.
travels.
Yes.
Of course, I forgot with that. Somebody else has said it, so I'll say Happy Father's Day to everybody.
Okay. Is there anything else? Let us prepare our hearts and our minds for prayer. Oh, gracious God, you are the one to whom we bring everything in our life. You know us already. And so we bring to you this day our gratitude for life, for grace, for creation, for the blessing of the rain we received, for the blessing of safe travels, for the good news of healing. Receive our thanks, O God. We bring to this day, gracious God, what grieves us. Injustice that favors the rich, the loss of jobs, ignoring the poor, death of loved ones. Receive our breaking hearts, O God. We bring to you, gracious God, this day all that is uncertain in our lives. Illnesses, injuries, the pain, the shattered dreams that lay in a heap before us, the despair that comes from loneliness and depression. Receive our worried hearts, O God. And now in true faith and true hope, gracious God, we lift up to you Randy, Michael, Lloyd, Carl, Tanya, Tanya, Sarah, Ken, Lulabelle, the family and friends of Tyler, Hetty, Eva, Dan, Jeanette, Rosella, Herb, Nick, Don and Phil, Bill and Betty, Orville and Loretta. For Harleen, Irene and Lois, Shirley, Bev and Mona. For Kelsey, for Ian, Adam, Abigail, Matt, Rose, Madison and Utana. For the well-being of our country, for the well-being of our world. We ask you, gracious God, to now receive the prayers from the deep places of our being. Receive our prayers. We give them to you for your keeping, for your healing. We bring to you this day our trust, O God. For you are the one who seeks the good of us all. You are the one in whose hands rest all of life. You are the one whose love is our hope and our home. Receive our trust and enable us to serve as those through whom you bring answers to prayers and faith to life. Let us now sing, hear our prayer, O Lord. Please join your voice with mine as we say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Many are the gifts of which God has so richly blessed us. Let us now make our offerings. May our offerings be of great thanksgiving. I would invite the ushers to receive this morning's offering. good and holy God, for your steadfast love and faithfulness, we give you thanks and bless your name. Let our whole lives become songs of gratitude, joy, and praise, so that all the earth might know that we are your people, and you are our God. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And now let us join together in our last hymn, Give Thanks. Let us now go out into the world in peace, and that we might bring hope to life for others, through whom we always say and all that we do to help. Let all God's people say, thanks be to God.